So what we want to do is, like I really want to promote conversations in the community. I think that having conversations with people is an important thing, and I think that we'll learn that we're not that different, and we want to learn how we can be better towards each other, and like live in this community and make this a better community. And I think by getting to know people and like finding out what problems they're going through and what I can do to help, what you can do to help, and I think that that's going to make us a better community. And we want to make this, like Wenatchee is really important to me. I want it to be a great community for myself, for you, and if it's not good for me and if it's not good for you, it's not good for any of us. And I think if we need to make this so where everyone goes, I love where I live, and having these conversations is a start to that.
I say that a lot. I think when we sit down and chat or just have decent, just conversations with people, you realize that we're a lot more in common than different. So I do agree with that.
Tell me a little bit about your story. Like, you're from here. Like, tell me,
Yeah, so, I grew up.
What was it like growing up?
I grew up in Wenatchee, and I graduated from Wenatchee High School in 2003. And that was a long time ago. It doesn't sound like a long time ago,
but
longer
for me.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that growing up in Wenatchee about 20 years ago was like the friendliest, especially for a gay youth. So I know I was definitely not the only one in the school, but I was definitely the most vocal. I was probably the one that everybody knew. They're like, oh, there's Elvis. He's the gay one. And it's such a small town, especially like my youngest sister is 9 years younger than I am. And when she went to school, same high school, 9 years later, her friends are like, aren't you the gay sister? And I was like, well, he's not the only one, but yes, my brother is gay. 9 years later.
That's I don't think nobody knew me 9 years later.
People talk, but I came back.
But people like pick on you? Was it okay? Or?
Yeah, people were definitely mean. The I hate to say like the normal things that people would say to us, but people always called me a faggot. They'd call me a queer, like it was a bad thing. Later on in life, I stopped letting those words bother me, mainly because I knew that it wasn't a reflection on how I was feeling. It was more a reflection on how the person was using the word towards me. But it was very hurtful as a 15-year-old. I would come home confused about why people didn't like me because of who my mental or how my body was more attracted to another man. I couldn't help it. When we were being taught sex education in 5th grade, they'd separate us and they'd be like, boys, you're supposed to like this. And I was like, I really don't. That doesn't do anything to me. Or like, I didn't have those feelings towards girls, even in like the 5th grade. That's when I started to like mostly notice that I was like, oh, I feel different. I know that, when all my other friends were like, oh, she's so cute. And I was like, I don't see that. Like I wasn't, like that. And so it wasn't, but, as I grew up a little bit more and, 15 came around, I came out to my parents, I came out to all my friends. Kids were mean. And I think kids are honestly, they have no filter. A lot of the times they'll just say things that are on their mind. A lot of times because they're either A, they don't know, or B, they are trying to be hurtful. The administration back then, administration being the high school administration, didn't do much to stop the bullying. We would tell them and they'd be like, okay, nothing ever happened. They didn't stop anything. But again, there was never like an anti-bullying campaign like there is now. We also didn't live in a world of social media where kids were being bullied a lot more. So that was pretty tough. Growing up gay in the Valley 20 years was not the easiest. And in fact, I couldn't wait to leave. I couldn't wait. So as soon as I was able to leave and I could afford, I moved to Seattle. And so I left. And honestly, I used to tell myself all the time, I'm never coming back. Like, I'm not moving back there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be a part of something that created so much hatred or tension. And so, I'll fast forward to when I moved back last year, and I realized that me moving away to Seattle did nothing for me to get over any sort of traumas that I had. So when I started driving the streets of Wenatchee 17 years later, and the same song came on KW3 that I was listening to back in high school, I got triggered. Like, I remember being 15 again and being scared and wondering, oh my God, why am I here again? And those feelings that I had swept under the rug, I had to work out really quickly because I had just bought a house. I just got,
And it started.
And I started a business, so I was like, all right, so, why do I feel these things? So it did bring me back. It brought me right back to that place where, of not being accepted. Last year, we hung up a pride flag here in this business in June. So we've been open for about a year now. And I took the flag down every night because I was afraid that somebody was going to throw something at our windows and break it. In fact, I put it up, I cried, I took it down, I put it back up, I cried again, and I took it back down. And this was like the very first week we were opening. And then the next day, some gentleman came in and saw the pride flag just sitting down, and he goes, when are you gonna put that up? And I was like, right now. I'm gonna do it right
cool.
now. So that was really, it was very hard last year to put it up. It was much easier this year, so.
So you feel like maybe things have changed a little bit, or do you feel somewhat accepted?
The community has definitely grown a lot since I left 15, 16, 17 years ago. And that's why I moved back. I did start to enjoy how community driven this city is. When Wenatchee rallies behind you, like, there's nothing we can't do. Like, the community aspect that's here is one of a kind. We instantly integrated with the Downtown Association, with the Chamber, and all the other local businesses. We were pretty accepted all around. Like, nobody gave us anything, and like any slack about anything. And people were very nice, very welcoming, and that was probably the best feeling I had, And so when I moved back before we opened, I didn't actually know why I had moved back. I had no idea, I'd sit at home before this opened and I cried and I'd be like, why am I here? This is when I was trying to work out my traumas. I was like, why am I here? Why am I here? And then once we opened up our cafe and we started getting a lot of younger teenagers and a lot of younger kids, most of our demographic is fairly young that come into our cafe. And watching that and having them like talk to us, it became pretty apparent why I was here. I wanted to give specifically the youth a place where they can just be whatever they want to be. we don't judge in any way. You come to our cafe as you are, and we'll accept you. We don't turn away anybody, no matter what. And I think it's starting to show, you know. And then I realized that we can make a bigger impact here than we do in Seattle.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great that we have diversity here, and you know that we can learn. I mean, it's great just learn about different people, and the more diversity here, the more things they bring. You know,
I had a conversation with one of teenager who comes here all the time, and he said, he's like, I'm happy you're here. And I was like, well, why is that? And he's like, well, you are the two first gay men I've ever met in my life. And before you, I had never talked to anybody who was gay. I had never interacted with anybody, and all I ever heard about gay people was what we learned about in church. And he's like, I'm so happy you're here because I've had some of the best conversations with you. And you made me realize that you're not as scary as sometimes people make it sound. You know, and after that, I kind of like, I sat down and I was like, I had no idea that we could make any sort of impact like that. Like it even blew my mind the fact that he's like, you're the first gay people I've ever talked to. And that's very interesting. And that was very eye-opening for us. So, you know, it would have been nice to know that I wasn't alone in school. You know, I knew I wasn't alone, but it would have been nice if somebody would have been like, hey, what you're feeling is normal. You know, I think, especially in school, kids already feel so confused about everything. They just honestly are like, they're not, on top of feeling everything that we're feeling, they're feeling that, but also trying to understand who they are. You know, what their feelings are. You know, they're experiencing love for the first time, and imagine that first time that they're experiencing love is something, or is experiencing to someone who they've been told their whole life is not right.
Yeah, I mean, I understand some of the, you know, I think everyone went through challenges in high school, and I would imagine that it was probably even more challenging, you know, being in your situation. And I went to school, you know, I graduated in '96, and I think it was even more challenging. There's confusion. It's like, I don't know how to interact with this person. Like, you know what, it's, yeah, and it's...
Well, you interact with us just like you interact with anybody else.
Yeah,
but
and
back
I think,
then...
No, and I think it's a good point, you know, and I think it's important to, you know, like, just get to know different people and interact, and I think you realize that it's not as odd as you might think, and it's not, that you're really no different, you know. Yeah, so what can I do to make this a better community for Elvis?
It's not what you can do to make my life better, although I really appreciate it. It's what we can do to make everybody's life a little bit better. You know, because when you try to be a better person, you're not just making it better for me, but you're making it better for everybody. And honestly, I think the best thing that anybody can do is affect the people that are mostly around them. You know, when actually I posted on my Instagram a while ago where I said, you know, it's not what we do when everybody's around us, it's what we do when we think that nobody is watching. And what I mean by that is, when one of your friends or somebody you're hanging around with or somebody that's just in your presence says something that is just hateful, or maybe they don't know it's hateful, is when you say, hey, that's not cool, we don't say that, we don't tolerate that. You know, for example, you know, if you're in a car driving with your buddies and all of a sudden you see someone and your friends start saying, oh my God, that guy's a homo, or they start saying things and that are putting people down, it's in that moment where you look at your friend and say, hey, that's not cool. You know, that's hateful, and we accept everybody for who they are. You know, it's in those moments, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because, you know, when you're around your friends, you know how they are. I mean, that's how we all are, right? Yeah. You know, you might get some pushback, but you definitely be like, it's those moments that your friends remember the most, is when you look at them and be like, hey, we don't do that here, or we don't talk like that. And it doesn't just necessarily have to be just the way you talk about the gay community, but also how we talk about, you know, how we talk about women, how we talk to our kids, you know, how we, you know, growing up instill being super masculine towards our young men, by saying things like, boys don't cry, or toughen up, or be a man, or hey, get up, shake it out. You know, letting kids express themselves in an emotional way is very healthy. It's what we do. It's who we are as humans.
Yeah, and I don't think that's like not something that would come up in my peer group of, because that's definitely my peer group of like toughen up, be a man, yeah, shake it off. You know, like if you're playing baseball and get hit, you know, by a pitch, toughen up, run the first, you know, like shake it off. And having this conversation, you know, like having a little bit of diversity of people in your group, you know, I think there's a lot of value to that. And having like conversations like this, there's a lot of value that we can learn and be better people, yeah, like you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, I've definitely played some sports and definitely gotten hit. And it does hurt, you know. It does toughen us up, you know. But, you know, it's, you know, yeah. I think at times, you know, when the youth is so susceptible to like to everything their parents say, right? When you're sitting at home, there happens to be a gay character on TV. What you say about that character in your living room affects the way your kids think about that all around, right? And that's tough, right? Because you're like, well, why do I have to censor myself at home? Well, honestly, you shouldn't be thinking hateful things, right? And I think a lot of the times we don't realize that what we say does affect the people around us. And so, you know, imagine a world where even if you don't agree with you know, what's being shown on TV, two gay men kissing or two females kissing or whatever it may be. But what if we celebrated the differences of how different humans are, right? We look at trees and we're like, look how beautiful that tree. Not one tree's the same. They're all unique. But we look at humans, and when we see uniqueness in humans, we almost put them down for being different, you know? So imagine living in a world where you see something that's not like you on TV, and you take the time to educate your child and saying, you know, people love who they love. That's a little bit different than what we raise and what we teach you here, but there is, you know, families that don't look like us out there, and that's also okay. You know, taking those moments to teach as opposed to taking those moments and looking at it in disgust can definitely make the world a better place.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I appreciate you sitting down and having the time to talk, and yeah, it was good. Yeah, learn a little bit more about you, Elvis.